Hello. This is The Pirates, Chapter 12. Cheng Lo sat up in bed, flexing a bronze metal fist. He was wearing a pair of black synthetic cotton briefs, and the silver sweat on his well-muscled golden torso glistened under the white neon lights of the sick bay. The white plastic bed linen was splattered with scarlet blood. "How does it feel?" asked the four-armed Mimosan medic, sitting on the left-hand side of the bed. The black-haired Oriental smiled. "Well, the finger joints are a bit tight, but apart from that, it feels strong. Very strong." Gunner Lo clenched his left fist and punched the metal wall behind him. A cloud of grey steam poured from the hole in the wall with a loud hissing sound. "Dr. Ami to engineering. We need some repairs in sick bay. Mr. Lo has just burst a hot water pipe." "On my way," replied the gruff voice of the chief engineer. "Oh, sorry about that," sighed Lo, plugging up the hole with a pillow. The four-armed medic stared at the erection beneath the gunner's black briefs and patted the Oriental's tight golden stomach with the palm of one hand. "Try not to get yourself overexcited. You've lost a lot of blood and you need to relax." Dr. Ami ran a finger down Mr. Lo's smooth, well-muscled, hairless chest to the tuft of black pubic hair at the nape of his navel. "Just let me know if you need some hand relief," he sighed. Cheng Lo smiled at the doctor. "I wouldn't say no." The four-armed medic slipped a hand down the front of the Oriental's black synthetic cotton underpants and squeezed his erect cock. He grabbed the waistband with two hands and pulled Lo's briefs down to his thighs. "I've never been fucked by an alien before," laughed Lo. The Oriental rolled onto his side and the four-armed Mimosan stroked the young gunner's tightly muscled buttocks, slowly sliding a free hand up the yellow man's moist golden arsehole. The door of the elevator slid open, and Chief Engineer Morgan stepped out, carrying a small blue metal toolbox. "I'm not interrupting," he asked. "I can always come back later." Cheng Lo reached down and pulled up his underwear. Dr. Ami shrugged his shoulders. "It's nothing that can't wait for a while," he sighed. "Mr. Lo isn't going anywhere, just yet." "So what seems to be the problem?" asked the pig-faced Hajian, opening his toolbox. Your timing," suggested Lo. William Bones was sitting in the captain's chair. He took a swig of the Culis Fruit Rum, a homebrew concocted by Calico Jack Rackman, from an opaque red bottle, and wiped his mouth with the left sleeve of his black cotton jacket. He crossed his legs and span the chair around several times with his right foot. 16 men on a dead man's chest. Speak to the devil and have done with the rest. Yo ho ho and a bottle of rum," he sang. He stopped the chair to face the aquarium in the corner of the bridge. "Well, that was a successful shopping trip." He grinned at the beautiful mermaid swimming about in the pink water. "I'm not sure if Gunner Lo would agree with you," gurgled Rackamali. Teach sat at his workstation behind the captain's chair, stroking the purple dog at his side. The blood beast was chained to the leg of the Minovan's console and rested its heavy head on the giant man's lap. It gazed up lovingly at the stony face of his black-bearded master. A trickle of creamy white spittle dripped from the corners of its mouth, and two large, razor-sharp ivory fangs protruded from its lower jaw. "I'm going to call him Chomper," sighed Teach. Silver was sitting on his chair talking to a brown-skinned youth leaning against the command console. "So, do you think we'll find any treasure maps on our journey?" asked Christopher Hawkins enthusiastically. He had dyed his hair green and styled it into a mohawk, and the sides of his head were shaven and smooth. Silver took a bite from a small, soft green plum. It was bare-chested and had a skull and crossbones motif tattooed in his right arm. "Would you like an Aculis fruit?" he asked, staring at the growing bulge beneath the young Nubian's gold plastine jeans. A trickle of gooey juice dripped from the fruit onto Silver's naked pink torso. Hawkins pointed to the picture on Commander Silver's ear. Sorry, on Commander Silver's arm. I like your tattoo. What is it? It's a Jolly Roger, replied the young spiky-haired Venetian, pressing the silver ring in his pierced left nipple with his right hand. Billy had one done as well. Silver dipped a finger into the puddle of sticky green juice on his belly and held it to the dark-skinned youth's full purple lips. Try some, he suggested. The Nubian sucked the juice from Silver's fingers and giggled. The young Venetian stood up and unzipped Hawkins' gold plastine jeans. A small red Felician boy sitting at the communications console licked his paws and scrubbed his fur. The cat-like child purred contentedly to himself. Ebony and Reed lay on the double bed in Calico Jack's cabin, gazing into each other's eyes. They were both naked and feeding each other from a bowl of aculis fruits, and the yellow satin bed sheets were stained in puddles of sticky green juice. The snake-headed Medusa licked her girlfriend's left bosom with a long forked tongue and hissed. A tubby, rosy-cheeked human, wearing an eye patch over his left eye, sat on a chair next to the bed, buttoning his purple and green patchwork jacket. I'd better go and see if Mr. Hands has any more of these plums. He picked up a red bottle and took a swig of aculis fruit rum. Morgan was asleep in the engineering room, resting his head on a console. Half a dozen empty red plastic bottles lay at his feet, and he snored loudly, snorting like a pig. Christopher Hawkins held his sweater up above his waist, and Silver knelt down in front of the dark-skinned youth, licking the Nubian from his chest to his navel with his tongue. He pulled Hawkins' gold plastine jeans down to his ankles, and massaged the hard-on beneath the boy's blue briefs. Hawkins lifted his blue and black striped sweater above his head, and dropped it onto the floor. Silver pulled down the Nubian's underpants and licked the shaft of the youth's large, thick brown penis. A red light flashed on the communications console, and a loud beep beep echoed around the bridge. Ben Gunn pricked up his ears and sat up in his chair. I'm picking up a vessel heading in our direction, Captain. He pressed a button on his console, and the view screen at the front of the bridge flickered into life. Captain Bones turned his chair to face the image of a huge, pale blue and silver, whale-shaped ship. Captain to all hands, he ordered. Man your stations, we've got big trouble. Captain Bones turned his chair to face the image. We've got big trouble. What's the problem, sir? Came the slurred voice of Slime's Hands over the intercommunication speaker. Was your dinner unsatisfactory? Shut up! Shut up! Mr. Hands, shouted the captain. Commander Silver pulled up his black plastine jeans and picked up his green and black striped sweater. Captain to all crew, battle stations, ordered the blue-skinned man buttoning his jacket. I put the crockery away, suggested the slug-faced Potassium. Christopher Hawkins buckled his belt and sat down at his console. Silver zipped up the fly of his jeans and pulled his chair closer to his workstation. He pressed a button on his console and the cabin lights changed from white to flashing red. The pale blue and silver Ventaran vessel was getting closer. A small grey-skinned Aculis swamp rat ran across Teach's console. The giant Manovan grabbed the rodent with his left hand and held it up to his snout. He sniffed it. The green-eyed rat stared into the face of his captor and squeaked. Teach stroked the rodent and opened his mouth. He swallowed the rat whole. Now that's what I call convenience food, he smiled. Hawkins turned his head to face the giant Manovan. I was going to keep one of those for a pet, he sighed. The metal doors of the elevator opened with a soft squishing sound, and Ebony and Reed stepped onto the bridge. The bald, pale-faced clone stared at the image on the view screen. That's the Ventaran mothership. We are really in the shit now, Captain, she remarked. I can see that, sighed the blue-skinned man in the captain's chair. The Ventaran mothership was about 20 times the size of the Quadog mercenary. Captain to engineering, engage plate shielding, ordered Captain Bones. Ebony stood next to the captain's chair. We won't stand a chance in battle, Billy. The Victorious is the flagship of the Ventaran fleet. I know, frowned the blue-skinned man, scratching his bearded chin. Captain to armory, load the trimorphic torpedoes and arm all weapons. Yes, sir, replied Lowe. How is the new hand, by the way, asked Captain Bones. It's working fine, sir, answered the yellow-skinned gunner, now that I have made a few adjustments. Captain to sick bay. Yes, Captain, what are your orders? Asked the blue four-armed doctor. Prepare to be busy, suggested Captain Bones. The image of the Ventaran mothership was getting larger. Captain to engineering, Morgan. I said engage the plate shielding. There was a loud snoring sound coming from the intercommunications speaker. Morgan, wake up, you imbecile! I need shielding now, shouted the blue man in the captain's chair. The metal doors of the bridge opened with a soft squishing sound, and Ebony stepped onto the elevator. The doors slid closed behind her. Ben Gunn turned his chair to face the captain. I'm receiving a transmission, sir. He pressed a button on the communications console. The image on the viewer at the front of the bridge flickered and danced, only to be replaced by Boudica, the Ventaran Empress. She was a short, fat, ample-bosomed, orange-skinned woman, with long, feathered, jet-black hair and gold and silver jewellery encrusted with various glittering crystals of red and blue. She was very beautiful, and wore luminous yellow face paint around her eyes and on her swollen lips. You are trespassing on Ventari territory, announced the Ventaran Empress. Her voice was loud and harsh. Captain Bones stood up. My apologies, Your Majesty. I was unaware that the Ventari had conquered this sector of the galaxy. The blue man bowed his head. Please forgive our intrusion. He paused. Commander, stand down, red alert, he ordered. Silver flicked a switch on the command console and the lights of the bridge changed from red to white. The plump orange woman gazed at the thin blue man. Your ship is an association vessel. It was a wise idea to customize it. If it had not been painted, I would have blown your vessel to smithereens without a second thought. William Bones turned his head towards the mermaid swimming about in the aquarium behind him. My navigator's idea. Grakamali splashed her tail and gurgled. It is an honour to make your acquaintance, O gracious eminence. The Ventaran Empress smiled. Princess, you are a long way from Atlantis. What are you doing on a pirate vessel? The mermaid smiled. I am on an adventure, Majesty Boudica, she gurgled. There was a loud clunking sound, like the sound of a metal box filled with cans of baked beans falling down a mountain made of steel. The plate shielding engulfed the Quadrag mercenary like the shell of an armadillo. The blue-skinned man sat down in the captain's chair. Bones to engineering, lower the shield. Are you sure you want to do that? Asked Ebony, sitting in the chief engineer's chair. Just do it, ordered the captain. A pig-faced man sat on the metal floor of the engineering room, beside the snake-headed Houston, clutching his broken snout. Blue blood poured from Morgan's flat, bruised, broken nose. Morgan sick bite. I did you with engineering, he snorted. There was a loud clunking noise like a giant iron butterfly stretching its rusty iron wings. Plate shielding disengaged, announced the serpent woman at the engineering console. The metal doors on the bridge opened with a soft squishing sound and Teach stepped into the elevator. The doors slid behind him. The doors slid closed behind him. Captain to all crew, return to your normal duty. The blue-skinned man was interrupted in mid-sentence by a high-pitched whistling sound like the noise of a swarm of giant quizzle wasps. A white light flashed on the view screen and the image of the Ventaran Empress was replaced by a small golden arrowhead and 10 green Association Viper-class battle cruisers. Chomper, the purple spiky-furred Aculus bloodbeast, tucked his horned tail between his hind legs and called under Teach's console. Reed sat down at the science station. The Ventaran mothership is withdrawing, sir. She is running away. Captain to engineering, engage plate shielding, ordered the blue-skinned man in the captain's chair. Make up your fucking mind, hissed Ebony. Captain to all crew, red alert, ordered Captain Bones. There was a loud clunking sound, like 100 computers being thrown out of the window of a tower block. The plate shielding engulfed the ship like a steel window blind. Commander Silver pressed a button on his console, and the lights changed from white to flashing red. Beep, beep, beep. I'm picking up a communication, Captain, announced the small red Felician boy. It's on an association vessel, so it's on an association frequency. Put it on the main viewer, ordered Captain Bones. Ben Gunn pressed a button on the communications console, and the angry face of an association fleet admiral appeared on the view screen. I always said that the Ventari were cowards, smiled Frank Drake. William Bones tapped a button on the left arm of the captain's chair with the blue finger. "It won't work a second time," sighed the orange-haired admiral. The blue-skinned man shrugged his shoulders. "Just thought I'd try," he sighed. Two of the association ships broke formation and headed towards the retreating Ventaran mothership. "Disengage your weapons and lower your shields," suggested Admiral Drake. "Activate the energy field," he ordered. A bright yellow light engulfed the Quadag mercenary like a celestial fishing net. The pirate vessel hung motionless in space like a ship in a bottle, or a wasp trapped in a spider's web. 5 green Viper-class battlecruisers surrounded the pirate ship, and a beam of golden lasers crisscrossed a path between the association vessels. "And don't try to run away," smiled the Admiral. Captain Bones shrugged his shoulders. "The thought hadn't even crossed my mind. Any weapons fire would be deflected back from the shield. Might recommend that you surrender, or blow yourselves to Kingdom Come with a trimorphic torpedo." "Your choice," sighed Admiral Drake. A small white monkey with one big red eye jumped onto the blue-skinned man's left shoulder. "Captain to Armory, disarm all weapons and disengage the plate shielding," he ordered. Captain Bones stood up and stared at the orange-haired man on the view screen. "I ask that you show my crew some mercy." "Tell your pilot to transfer all controls to my ship," ordered the Admiral. "The password is piggyback." "Captain to pilot." "I heard him," replied the sharp metallic voice of Excrimilium. There was a loud clanking sound like a pair of steel gauntlets peeling a giant iron prawn. Christopher Hawkins stood up. He stared at the face on the view screen and bit his bottom lip. "What will happen to me?" he asked. "The sentence for desertion is 20 years in solitary confinement on one of our asteroid prison colonies," explained Admiral Drake. The young Nubian sat down in his chair and rubbed the back of his neck with his right hand. "However, the only sentence for piracy is execution. You will be put into an airlock and ejected into space. Without a spacesuit, if you are lucky," sighed the ginger-haired officer on the view screen. "We call it walking the plank. Except, of course, there is no plank to walk," laughed the Admiral. Commander Silver scratched his head. "What do you mean without a suit? If we are lucky?" Admiral Drake smiled. "How long can you hold your breath? Suffocation is a very slow and painful death, and space can be a very lonely place to die." The young Venusian rubbed his throat with his left hand and gulped. Ben Gunn curled himself into a ball of soft red fur and rolled under the communications console, shaking with fear. A small white cheeky monkey clutched tightly to its master's head. "Cheeky, cheeky," chirped Chico. "Open your shuttle bay doors and prepare to be boarded," ordered the ginger-haired man on the view screen. William Bones unbuttoned his jacket and took out a flat silver box. He opened the case and picked up a long purple tube. He put the Venusian cigarette between his lips and lit the tapered end with a golden cigarette lighter. The blue-skinned man inhaled deeply. "Captain to engineering. Open the shuttle bay doors," ordered Billy Bones. "We have guests." A grey-skinned swamp rat nibbled at the toe of Reed's left boot. She gazed down at the rodent and stamped on it. William Bonnet stood up and walked towards the elevator. "Mr. Silver, come with me. We don't want to keep our visitors waiting." The doors of the bridge slid open with a soft squishing sound. The young Venusian stood up and followed his captain into the elevator. "Miss Reed, you have the bridge." The blue man held tightly to Silver's left hand and the doors slid closed behind them. "Shouldn't we go past the armory on our way?" suggested the silver-haired youth. Captain Bones smiled at the young handsome Venusian. We wouldn't stand much of a chance against that kind of firepower." Commander Silver shrugged his shoulders. "At least we might be able to take a few of them down with us." "You're beginning to sound like General Custer," laughed the blue-skinned man, kissing his companion on the cheek. "Who?" asked Commander Silver. "He was slaughtered by Red Indian Apaches at the Battle of the Little Bighorn," explained Captain Bones. "I've never heard of it," sighed the silver-haired Venusian. "Happened a long time ago on planet Earth." The blue-skinned man put his right arm around his boyfriend's shoulder. Silver looked at his captain. "Billy, there's something I need to tell you." Commander Silver took a step away from the captain. "Can't it wait?" asked Billy Bones. "No." The young silver-haired Venusian frowned. "I don't love you anymore." I'm leaving." Tears welled up in the blue man's eyes. He took a deep breath. "It's one hell of a day to get cold feet. You could have picked a better time to tell me." He sighed. "Sorry," muttered the blue-skinned man. Sorry, muttered the young Venetian. "I was waiting for the right moment," he explained. "If you hadn't noticed, Mr. Silver, we are about to be boarded by a squad of association troops. I hardly think that this is the right moment." "We'll still be friends," suggested the young handsome Venetian. "I hope so," replied the blue-skinned man, "but at this moment in time I don't need a friend. I need a first officer." Captain Bones shook his head and frowned. The doors of the... chapter 13. We'll come back to that one. Chapter 13. Thank you. The doors of the square brown troop shuttle opened, and an association lieutenant wearing an officer's uniform stepped out, accompanied by 8 titanium-plated heavy metal security droids, and a squad of 12 association troops in green uniforms, wearing helmets and body armour, and armed with Zap machine guns. Captain Bones saluted his ex-commanding officer. "You still have a flair for the dramatic entrance, sir." Lieutenant Riley drew his Vap gun and aimed it between the blue-skinned man's eyes. "I should kill you now, Billy," he sighed, "but Admiral Drake insists that you face a court-martial first." "You know what a stickler for rules the old man is." Commander Silver stood next to his captain, with his hands in his head. 2 of the association officers strip-searched the pirates, and, accompanied by a security droid, escorted them to the brig. We'll leave it at that for now. No, I won't carry on. Fuck it. The doors of the elevator opened with a soft squishing sound, and Lieutenant Walter Riley stepped onto the bridge of the Quadac Mercenary, followed by 2 titanium-plated security droids. The metal door slid closed behind them. A bald, pale-skinned woman stood at the science station with her hands behind her head, and Ensign Hawkins sat at the command console with his arms held high in the air. Grakamali gurgled in her aquarium, staring into the glowing red eyes of a gleaming white robot. The elevator door slid open, and 4 association troops marched onto the bridge armed with Zap machine guns. Walter Riley sat down in the captain's chair. "Put them in the brig with the others," he ordered. Lieutenant Riley stood up and wiped the sticky brown goo from the backside of his trousers with his right hand. Put her fingers to his nose and frowned. "Has anybody got a tissue?" he asked. "Cheeky," chirped the small white monkey hiding under the captain's chair. An association guard handed a white handkerchief to his captain, and Walter Riley used it to wipe the mess from his trousers. He looked towards the ginger-haired man on the view screen. "Mission accomplished, sir," he smiled. "The ship is secure." Admiral Drake smiled. "Excellent. Good work, Captain Riley." "Thank you," replied the grey-haired man in the captain's chair. The elevator doors closed with a splat, squashing a small grey swamp rat between the edge of the door and the wall. A young human wearing a green uniform sat down at the command console. Ensign Crusoe took off his helmet and tucked it under his chair. "Course is set for the Association Colony, Sanctuary 3. We should reach it at 2 days at light speed." "I thought Sanctuary 2 was closer," sighed the captain. "Sanctuary 2 was destroyed last year, sir," replied Crusoe. "I didn't know the war was over," replied Riley. "I expect the colonists on Sanctuary 1 are still celebrating." "That planet was destroyed by Sanctuary 3, sir. They used a thermoneutrino radioxide bomb. There were no survivors." "I thought TNRs were prohibited by intergalactic law." "They claimed diplomatic immunity, sir. The governor of the planet is the son of President Roddenberry," explained Ensign Crusoe. "Huh. I'm surprised that he's still alive. He must be at least 110 by now," sighed Captain Riley. "He's not exactly alive, sir," replied the young ensign. "His brain was transplanted into a new host before his body died." "Who was the volunteer?" "One of his servant boys, I think," answered Crusoe. "But I really don't think he had much choice in the matter." A huge white security droid stood guard at the doors of the elevator. The metal doors slid open, and 3 association troops stepped onto the bridge. "The prisoners are under lock and key," announced Crewman Nelson. saluting the captain's chair.